More and more attention is being focused on the main drivers of economic growth, the micro, small and medium enterprises, MSMEs. The biggest challenge has always been access to funds with affordable interest rates. Now, the Central Bank of Nigeria in August 2013 launched the Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Development Fund, or the MSME DF. But at an interactive session on Wednesday with some deposit money banks, there were complaints of low access of the funds, with only about 40.3 billion naira disbursed to MSMEs, while commercial banks have only accessed 814 million naira out of this fund. Now, this comes as the federal government plans to launch a $1 billion SME wholesale bank. Joining me to look at the issues is the Director, Membership and Public Relations of the Nigerian Association of Small and Medium Enterprises, NASME, Nerus Ekeze. Thank you so much, Nerus, for joining me on the program this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So, interesting times. Let's start with the conversation that happened yesterday, or that's on Wednesday now. There were complaints of low access of the funds, with only about 40.3 billion naira of the 220 billion naira MSME development fund that was launched in 2013. What are the issues? Why is it that the MSMEs are not accessing these funds?
First of all, I will also have to appreciate the government for coming out with this initiative. But then, having come out with these initiatives, it is expected that issues that will cause access to this fund should have been addressed a long time ago. 40 billion assessed, as they said, out of 220 billion. We are looking at less than 20%, about 18%. A fund that was earmarked last year, which means probably a year after, for a sector that is lacking funding, for a sector that needs about 9.6 trillion for their funding needs to be addressed, for them to have a leapfrog in the activities.
Yeah, but then, you see, the monies have, okay, we need about 9 trillion naira to, kickstart or roll this key sector, as the case may be. But then we have at least a little fund. We have 220 billion out of the 9 trillion that's, the MSMEs desperately need. But even at that, the 220 billion, only, as you've just pointed out, less than 20% has been accessed. So what is the issue? Why are they not accessing this fund?
Well, why they are not accessing the fund have combination of issues. Issues from the participating financial institution, the PFI, issues from eligibility criteria, issues on the side of the MSME themselves. Now, if you look at the PFIs, we have the deposit money banks, we have the development financial institution, the Bank of Industry, the Bank of Agriculture, and then we have the state government. Now, how many of the state government have accessed the fund? How many of the commercial banks have accessed the fund? How many of even the macro finance banks that are supposed to play at the macro level, where you have the majority of these businesses, how many of them have accessed the fund? Now, if you take the microfinance bank, for example, we all know that the microfinance bank in Nigeria right now, they are weak, structurally weak. Now, and that's the reason why probably they may not be able to meet the criteria to access the fund for all lending to the macro sector. Okay? But then, look at the commercial banks, about 20 commercial banks in Nigeria. We are just talking about less than 10 who have signed the memorandum of understanding with Central Bank of Nigeria. Okay? Now, if less than 10 out of 20 plus of the banks have done that, so why haven't other banks keyed in? Now, look at also the level of awareness. Okay? Now, the association have been doing their bit to inform members. Most MSMEs do not even know about the fund. Even where they don't know how to go about it. Now, we are also even saying for these funds to be easily accessible by the MSMEs, beyond the conditions, which of course collateral is required, we are saying, now we have the BMOs, the business membership organizations, comprising the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, the NASME, the NASIMAS. Why can't government key in these organizations from start, even from planning stage, to enable them carry their members along. So until governments begin to realize that the BMOs are key towards the development of the sector, they will just be running around the circle.
You talked about eligibility criteria.
Yes.
Let's focus a little more on that eligibility criteria.
Okay.
Now, looking at the fact that this fund is supposed to be for micro, small, and medium enterprises, one wouldn't really, worry so much about the criteria that, makes you eligible to access this fund. So could you just list some of those criteria that make you eligible for this fund, and why it seems as if it's so much of an issue?
Okay, yeah, it will remain an issue. It will remain an issue. One of the criteria on the side of the MSME is, of course, you must have some level of collateral. Even though the MSME Council met and decided to pull down the collateral to 50%. I mean, 50% of the amount you are requesting for. Now, how many of these MSMEs have the collateral? That is an issue. Yeah, we believe, yes, we know. Even the policy says, the CBN says, you shouldn't lend without collateral. But there are different kinds of collateral. Now, the collateral the banks are looking at are physical collateral. Most of the MSMEs, they don't have the physical collateral. We are even telling the banks, we can have a loan on the equipment, on the properties of these MSMEs and lend to them, okay? Now, until we address the issue of collateral, access to this fund will remain low. And most of the MSMEs, of course, okay, part of the fund, 10%, 9.7% of the fund has been earmarked for the development of the sector in terms of awareness, in terms of capacity building, in terms of financial literacy. We are not even talking about that. How many times have the central bank organized stakeholders forum to let them know how to go about the fund? We did a stakeholder forum last week in Lagos, and we had more than 500 participants at that forum. We had only one testimony. Until we begin to get testimony for those who have assessed it, even the claim of 40 billion that have been disbursed will remain doubtful.
So we've talked about the issue of accessing the fund. We've talked about collateral. Now let's talk about the interest rates. Most of the MSMEs complain about the fact that even at 9%, which is what's supposed to be given, the fund should be lent to them, is still on the high side. What is the best interest rate for them at this time?
If you want to talk about the best interest rates, then we should be comparing interest rates as obtainable in advanced countries, where funds are lent less than 5%. Of course, this is Africa, this is Nigeria. We even congratulate the governments that have rolled out this fund at 9%. We've never had it at 9% before, but the issue is the 9%, I would like to understand it divided into two. Now, there is a 7% spread for the PFIs, the participating financial institution, and there is a 2% from the central bank. So invariably, this fund is being given out at 2%. So now the PFI who are administering the fund have a 7% spread. This 7% is supposed to assist them, okay, in monitoring the fund, processing the fund, monitoring the fund, and at the same time cushion the risk. Okay, but then beyond the interest rate, for me, for us at NASME, we want to believe that 9% interest rate is considerably okay.
So if it's considerably okay, why is it that? Because I'm guessing that that's one of the issues that the MSMEs are facing, looking at and refusing to come to even borrow from the banks in the first place.
Well, it's really not the main issue. I have to tell you.
One of the issues.
Yeah, probably one of the issues. But the main issue is the banks. Most of the MSMEs we have talked to, when they go to the banks, they will shift the goalpost. Okay? I'll give an example. After meeting all the requirements, now some banks who have rolled into this fund will tell you to open an account and run it for 6 months. So from the point you have applied, you're not beginning to run an account for 6 months. And only God knows how they want that account to be run. See, it was not a CBN guideline. Not at all. Now, when we talk about guarantees, the guidelines talk about guarantees for facilities between 500,000 to 5 million that should be administered to the macro categories, okay? The banks have jettisoned the guarantee and they are also asking for collateral, which is not supposed to be so. Small businesses of that nature, of course, you don't expect them to have collateral. You don't expect them. And as I say, from 500,000 to 5 million, guarantee is okay for you to have access to the fund. So we want to believe the PFIs have remained the main stumbling block for the disbursement of this fund. And we will encourage the central bank to look beyond the PFIs and begin to discuss with the BMOs, the business membership organizations, and begin to find a way to get them involved in administering the fund to their members.
Now that the federal government has announced plans to launch the $1 billion SME wholesale bank, do you think these problems, these issues that you've raised now, will be addressed?
We hope it should be addressed, depending on the conditionalities. Now, again, this issue of wholesale development bank, the government want to set up, of course, it's been on since last year. But I tell you, the BMOs are not involved in the policy design of this institution. And for us, it is a minus for this project. It is not late for them to get the BMOs to get involved. If they design this project, roll it out, begin to administer it, we may likely have the same problem. Now, the BMOs, they are closer to these MSMEs. They know their problems. They know how to solve their problems. Now, Central Bank of Nigeria should find a way to get the BMOs involved in all the interventions they are rolling out for the sector. If they don't do that, these problems will continue unabated.
Mayor Sekeze, Director of Membership and Public Relations of the Nigerian Association of Small and Medium Enterprises, NASME, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Our Business Morning continues in just a moment. Please join me again.